Minister Algobra, should we close the borders to countries from Africa to prevent the spread of the new variant?
Look, we're monitoring the situation. I just want to reassure you and reassure all Canadians, as they've seen all along, our government has been taking decisive and strict measures at our borders to protect Canadians, and we will do the same. We are currently in discussions, in monitoring what's happening and discussion about what measures we can implement.
Do you consider this variant as a threat right now?
You know, this virus is a threat, and that's why I want to repeat the message to all Canadians. Get vaccinated. Please follow public health advice. Thank you.
So I didn't get a chance to ask you about the Environment Commissioner's report yesterday. Do you agree that the emission reduction program is a fossil fuel subsidy? That's what he said. He termed it as.
No, I don't. It was a COVID program which had the specific focus on two things. Can I take this off? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm fine with that. Everyone else?
Yeah. Go ahead. That had a specific focus on two things. One was during a pandemic when oil prices actually went negative. They were record low. It was about sustaining the work and the workers, the jobs for people who live and work in the industry. But it was also about ensuring at a time where companies were essentially facing economic crisis that they would continue to do the right thing, which is reduce methane emissions. And there were 4.6 megatons of emissions that were reduced. But what I would say, and I agree with the Commissioner on this, is we're not in the same situation now. The economic crisis for the oil sector has passed, and now it's time to actually look at whether this program should continue in its current form.
But, I mean, this is a grant that's going to the oil and gas industry, and some of them in their application said that they might increase production. How could that not be a fossil fuel subsidy or some sort of fossil fuel financing?
It's actually not a grant. 80% of it are loans. They're not grants, so be careful there. It is a mechanism that was intended to ensure that we sustain jobs during a crisis and that we actually continue to work on reducing emissions. Those emissions, those 5 megatons, would not have happened if it wasn't for this plan. But what I would say is, on an ongoing basis, if you were setting this program up as an ongoing program, you would set it up differently, and that's exactly what we're looking at.
Okay, so where are we at with phasing out fossil fuel subsidies? Are we going to be phasing out all fossil fuel subsidies? Are we going to be phasing out inefficient fossil fuel subsidies? Like, is your language changing with that? And where are we at on that plan that was promised, I believe, in 2015?
So, as you know, there's an international commitment at the G20 to phase out what are called inefficient fossil fuel subsidies by 2025. Canada is the only G20 country that's advanced that, so we've said we'll do that by 2023. To be honest with you, I don't like the terminology inefficient fossil fuel subsidies, because people say, well, what does that actually mean? Well, for me, what it means is you're phasing out anything that incents the exploration and the production of fossil fuels. We will be doing that by 2023. Let me be clear, though, what it does not mean is investments that the government may make alongside energy sector partners to reduce emissions. So things like carbon capture and sequestration are not inefficient fossil fuel subsidies. So we will be phasing out those things that incent the production and the development of fossil fuels by 2023. I unfortunately have to go to question.
And what about the report? What about the report that you promised in 2015 to do with Argentina?
Argentina.
Yeah. When are we going to see that?
So that process is ongoing. I can't give you a date, but that's something certainly that we need to come forward and give you an update on, and we will do that.
Okay, thank you. A lot of countries are canceling flights to South Africa. Should Canada be adopting similar measures given that a very infectious COVID-19 variant has been discovered there?
Well, Canada's approach is always one where we follow the science and we listen to the advice of our public health officials. I know that my colleagues who are working on this will be able to respond to this, but suffice it to say, this government always follows the science and listens to our public health advisors.
But we have like 2 years of science on this and COVID-19. Why can't we make a decision? Like, I feel like there's an established rubric, and we know how to. This isn't a new rodeo for us.
It is not, look, I mean, we continue to fight COVID-19, continue to finish the fight against COVID-19. I'm really thrilled about the vaccinations that Canadians have taken to ensure that places like businesses are open, and that they're open safely, and that they continue to be. So we're going to continue to do this work to make sure that we finish this fight against COVID-19.
Okay, and you're going to be tabling, you spoke about having a trade agreement with I believe it's the ASEAN group of countries. you had an NDP MP in the House of Commons this week saying that, where's the information on this? He seemed to be blindsided about this. So when are you going to be presenting information to parliamentarians? When are the committees going to come back so they could kind of get the details about that?
Well, we table the intent as we are required to do under the transparency policy. So I'm very pleased that we were able to do that. I know that committees will be formed very soon, and I look forward to the committees making the decisions about what they would like to study, and if this is what they would like to study, I welcome it.
Before the end of the year, are we going to see committees?
The decisions about what comes before committees rest with the committees.
But the committees aren't struck. Lots of countries are closing their borders with South Africa because of that infectious variant that was found there. Do we have time to dilly-dally on this?
Well, look, from all indications that I've seen coming out of South Africa, this variant poses some risks that we haven't seen before. I think the government should be monitoring this very closely, should be taking advice from as many people as possible, the experts involved, and make a decision. We need to take the measures that you pointed out, potentially suspending flights on a temporary basis, and that's something the government should do based on the advice given.
So you think if the advice is to suspend flights, we should do that?
Well, I think the government needs to make that decision, and the government should take the information presented to them and make a decision based on the threats, the potential threats, the health risks, and the list goes on.
But do we have time to kind of dilly-dally on this?
Well, I would hope the government would be taking this seriously and be taking this as quickly as possible and already be ahead of this. That would be my hopefully my assumption. Hopefully I'm correct. I hope they don't wait until the last second to do this.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Hi there. We just came out, this Conservative Opposition, Raquel Dancho, Public Safety Shadow Minister, and my colleagues. We just came out of question period today, and we're quite dismayed and we're shocked to hear the lack of confident answers from the Liberal government concerning the new African variant. We went into question period expecting we were going to hear a plan of what the government's going to do about this, and we were left with absolutely no confidence that decisive action is being taken. And again, the government is saying that they have a record of being decisive on COVID, and we know that that is laughable and patently false. They've several times over the last 2 years, they've taken their time and sat on their hands to the detriment of Canada and to the spread of variants across our country. It took them months to originally close the border of coronavirus. It took them flip-flopping on masks, and today they've only told us that they're going to wait for direction from the World Health Organization before they take any measures. And yet Germany, Italy, India, Israel, the UK have all taken decisive measures already to keep their citizens safe by instituting travel bans, quarantine, enhanced measures. Many countries have already taken action, and Canada has yet to even update their travel advisory website. We're taking this extremely seriously, and we're very disappointed with the lack of confident answers from the government today. And Aaron O'Toole has taken leadership on this morning and asked the government for several measures that that the Prime Minister and his cabinet ministers should be decisive on. We're looking for an updated travel advisory right away. That should have already been done, so we are expecting that imminently. Mandatory screening, enhanced measures, as well as mandatory quarantine for travelers coming from those countries. So again, we're incredibly disappointed and dismayed to see the lack of confident answers coming from the Liberal cabinet ministers this morning in question period.
Monsieur Berthold, les deux ministres vont annoncer les deux ministres vont annoncer dans moins d'une heure ce qu'ils vont faire. Alors, vous voulez qu'ils fassent quoi exactement? Qu'est-ce qui serait suffisant?
Bon, je pense que ce qui est important de commencer aujourd'hui, c'est de dire qu'il y a plusieurs pays qui ont déjà agi face à ce nouveau variant-là, un variant qui est inconnu, qu'on a peu d'informations, mais il y a déjà des pays qui ont pris les devants, qui n'ont pas été lents à réagir comme le Canada l'a été au tout début de cette pandémie-là, quand le Canada était lent à agir pour prévenir la population, lent à agir pour fermer les frontières, lent à agir pour fournir les vaccins. Et ce qu'on souhaite aujourd'hui, c'est que le gouvernement ne soit plus lent à agir, mais que le gouvernement adopte des mesures rapides pour justement empêcher empêcher ce variant-là d'entrer au Canada, puis de se propager au Canada, puis de créer des nouveaux confinements, puis des nouvelles fermetures de commerce. Ce qu'on a entendu aujourd'hui n'avait absolument rien de rassurant, parce que, comme je l'ai dit au départ, il y a déjà de nombreux pays qui ont pris des mesures pour protéger leur population face à ce variant-là. Et aujourd'hui, quand on a posé la question à plusieurs reprises au gouvernement, on n'a eu absolument aucune présentation d'un plan, aucune mesure concrète qui a été annoncée pour rassurer les Canadiens. Donc, ce qu'on souhaite, c'est que le gouvernement prenne les mesures nécessaires, ferme les frontières, pour justement éviter que ce variant-là entre au pays en provenance de ces pays-là, qu'on fasse des vérifications obligatoires des gens qui sont passés par ces pays-là pour faire sûr que cette fois-ci, on ne manque pas le bateau, puis parce qu'on n'agit pas assez vite, qu'on ne soit pas obligé de fermer encore une fois l'économie canadienne. C'est les mesures que Erin O'Toole a demandé qu'on prenne ce matin et c'est les mesures que j'espère le Canada va annoncer rapidement. On ne peut pas attendre 2 semaines, on ne peut pas attendre que l'Organisation mondiale de la santé analyse et fasse toutes les recherches et finalement nous dise dans 2 semaines qu'on devrait fermer les frontières comme on a attendu la première fois. Ce qu'on veut, c'est des gestes maintenant pour prévenir une nouvelle vague. On attend que les experts du gouvernement nous avisent, nous tous, les Canadiens, de ce qu'il faut faire.
Est-ce que ça vous fait réviser votre position sur les tests PCR obligatoires pour entrer au Canada? Est-ce que vous pensez qu'on devrait peut-être les garder encore, étant donné l'apparition de ce nouveau variant-là, ou non?
On a toujours exigé des tests aux frontières. Notre position n'a pas changé là-dessus. On a suivi et on demande au gouvernement de continuer de suivre les recommandations de son comité d'experts. Son comité d'experts qui a été, dont le rapport a été rendu public au mois de mai. Donc, c'est une situation qui évolue, c'est une situation qui évolue rapidement. Le nouveau variant vient d'apparaître, donc il faut que le gouvernement et ses experts nous donnent des nouvelles directives pour qu'on soit en mesure de répondre correctement pour protéger la population. Et c'est ce qui est important, c'est ce qui compte actuellement.
Est-ce que vous remettez en question votre demande à propos des tests PCR pour les double vaccinés? Vous vouliez...
Encore une fois, nous, ce qu'on fait, c'est qu'on suit les recommandations des experts du gouvernement. Les experts du gouvernement doivent nous dire aujourd'hui ce qu'on doit faire pour prévenir une nouvelle pandémie. Et c'est ce qu'on s'attend. Et malheureusement, quand on a posé la question aujourd'hui en Chambre, on n'a eu absolument aucune réponse, aucune indication que le gouvernement était prêt à justement faire face à cette nouvelle vague-là. Le gouvernement a injecté en février dernier 53 millions pour un comité spécial à l'Agence de santé publique du Canada, justement pour faire l'étude des variants. Le nouveau variant n'est même pas sur la liste des variants identifiés par l'Agence de santé publique du Canada au moment où on se parle. Donc ça, c'est inquiétant et c'est à ces mesures-là, c'est à ces connaissances-là qu'on doit se fier. Mais malheureusement, le gouvernement, en ce moment, nous laisse complètement dans le néant. Donc, on attend des recommandations. On veut que le gouvernement suive la science, suive les recommandations des experts. Je pense que c'est la seule chose à faire pour le bien des Canadiens.
C'est bon. Merci.
Merci.
So, Minister Fraser, I was going to ask, you're from Atlantic Canada. I want to ask about the federal funding for flood support and rebuilding roads. What have you been hearing and what support is going to be sending that way?
So, look, I think you can appreciate it's just been a couple of days since this extreme weather event has torn through our communities. When I first saw the pictures that came in just after I landed in Ottawa at the beginning of this week, actually the first picture I saw, I had my constituency office in the town of Antigonish in the background, and the water on Main Street was above the wheels on the cars. The next picture that I saw was a torrent had ripped through the Highway 245, which is actually the road that I grew up on. This one hits pretty close to home. The immediate response has got to be focused on making sure that people are safe. I notice in particular, and I very much appreciated that Minister Blair put out a short statement saying that we were standing by, ready to help the people of Atlantic Canada. To date, the province of Nova Scotia has not made a request for assistance, for example, from the Canadian Forces. I understand that the province of Newfoundland has, and that we will be providing support to help facilitate maintaining safety in the communities and evacuations and operations of that nature. When it comes to the longer-term play, I think we need to take a long, hard look at the funding that's being put in place for disaster mitigation and adaptation. Of course, we do have the Disaster Mitigation and Adaptation Fund, which we've been advocating for a number of years. But between what's going on in Atlantic Canada and the horrific scenes that we're seeing in BC right now, this is going to be an important moment that we reflect on and say, The cost of climate change is immense. We need to be funding mitigation efforts. We need to be funding adaptation efforts. If I look back to the time I was a kid until about the year 2000, I remember I had a conversation with the Insurance Bureau of Canada, who's, although motivated for the right reasons, very interested in the economic impact of insured losses of climate change. And they mentioned from the mid-'80s to 2000, the annual cost of severe weather events was between $250 and $450 million annually, if memory serves. The last 10 years, that's been closer to $2 billion annually. And if you look at the scale of these events and the projections for the next few years, that number is going to continue to climb. We're going to continue to pay for the costs of inaction through increased insurance premiums. We're going to continue to pay for it through increased municipal taxes. We're going to continue to pay for it through increased emergency responses and federal and provincial infrastructure projects. These costs are significant, and the cost of taking action on climate change, in my view, is far, far less than the cost of ignoring the challenge.
I also want to ask you about Afghanistan. We saw a story last night from Danielle Manjan. She talked to some former political leaders from that country, and they were talking about how the situation is getting so desperate that people have no choice but to sell their children for food. What is being done? What is Canada doing to get the people out of Afghanistan that want to get out?
So look, there's a couple of different aspects, and I did see some of these stories circulating, not just in the past couple of days, but from the very moment that I was appointed as Minister for this portfolio. So if you'll indulge me for a moment, I'll try to give you a full answer. The starting point for me is it was really, really important for Canada to make, frankly, a world-leading commitment to resettle 40,000 Afghan refugees. And it's important to acknowledge that there are things that have been done and are continuing to happen now. We've got nearly 4,000 Afghan refugees have already resettled in Canada. We've got another 1,200 people who have been approved for onward travel to Canada that are currently in a third country, and another 9,500 or so that have been approved that are currently inside Afghanistan. When it comes to the people who are not yet in Canada that we want to bring here, depending on the individual circumstances of the particular group or particular individual, the challenges are quite unique. If we're dealing with people who are already outside of Afghanistan, although we would love to snap our fingers and point to this group or that group and get them here immediately, it's really, really important that we continue to use literally the best, in my mind, process of refugee settlement globally, which Canada has. In fact, we've resettled 1/3 of the world's refugees this past year out of the total globally. That includes working with referral partners to ensure that we have appropriate screening processes in place, not just for security, but to make sure that we're helping the most vulnerable people. We don't want to find ourselves in a position where, of the spaces that we're making available, we're helping people who perhaps are not amongst the most vulnerable. Now, the challenges when we're dealing with the situation in Afghanistan are obviously extraordinarily complex, and I can't make this point clearly enough. The Taliban has seized control of Afghanistan. Canada does not have a presence. We need to work with partners in the region, whether it's Pakistan, whether it's Qatar, whether it's the UAE, non-state actors who have relationships on the ground that can facilitate the safe passage and onward travel of very vulnerable people who are there now. The challenges range from not having access to an airport to needing to find someone who can work with officials in the country, which again is controlled by the Taliban, to secure travel documentation. And the documentation that people require is different depending on who you are and where you want to go and the method of transportation you're using. These challenges are things that we're working on literally every single day and through the night often. It's the thing that has consumed probably more than half of my time since I've been appointed the minister just 1 month ago today, and it's the kind of thing that I'm going to continue to work on until this job is done, because we have made a very public commitment to settle 40,000 Afghan refugees. We're going to make good on that commitment, and I'd make the additional comment that I think it's essential we make good not just on the public statement, but on the moral obligation that Canada has to help those who have helped us during our mission in Afghanistan as well. Excellent. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.